Hello and welcome. You're watching India Today Global. I'm Geeta Mohan, and the big story coming in from the United States of America. Hours after voters in major races across the country backed Democrats, rebuking his performance, President Donald Trump addressed the election results, saying they weren't good for anybody. Trump was speaking to Republican senators at a White House breakfast on the one-year anniversary of his victory. The president says the government shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republican Party in the elections, and called on the senators to bring it to an end. GOP senators have panned that effort, saying the 60-vote threshold ensures minority party, which is now Democrats, has a say, something that's important if power shifts in Washington. Trump also took no blame for the Republican losses in Tuesday night's election.
Last night, it was, not expected to be a victory. It was very Democrat areas, but I don't think it was good for Republicans. I don't think it was good. I'm not sure it was good for anybody. But we had an interesting evening, and we learned a lot. You read the pollsters. The shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans, and that was a big factor. And they say that I wasn't on the ballot was the biggest factor. But I don't know about that, but I was honored that they said that.
New Yorkers get their first Muslim and South Asian mayor as Zohran Mamdani wins the mayoral poll by defeating former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican Curtis Sliwa. As Mamdani and supporters celebrate the victory, challenges lie ahead for President Donald Trump, who has threatened to slash federal funds flowing into New York if or should Mamdani win. And that's the case right now, but a defiant Mamdani says he will take on the rich who rule the city and fulfill the campaign promises of affordable living and free childcare.
So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
History sealed, a win that the Democrats could not have asked for at a juncture when the US is undergoing massive policy and geopolitical changes on Trump's return to the White House. New York gets its first Muslim and person of South Asian descent as mayor. A Democratic Socialist, 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani defeated former governor and independent candidate Andrew Cuomo and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa to ascend to the mayoral post. Mamdani will be sworn in on New Year's Day 2026. Thanking New Yorkers from across all sections for love and support, the charismatic Mamdani promised to fulfill the campaign promises, from free bus rides to affordable rent and free childcare. In his post-victory speech, Mamdani promised to go after richer sections hoarding money and exploiting the common man, a direct reference and challenge to US President Donald Trump and a realtor.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants.
Mamdani, a son of immigrants, struck a chord with fellow immigrants who had come to pursue the American dream. Contrary to Trump's anti-immigration policies, Mamdani voiced his support for people from different religions and communities. He took pride in being a Muslim and, most importantly, was unapologetic about his socialist stance.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us. After all, the conventional wisdom would tell you that I am far from the perfect candidate. I am young, despite my best efforts to grow older. I am Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. And most damning of all, I refuse to apologize for any of this.
Mamdani's Indian roots reverberated in his speech as he invoked former Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's Tryst with Destiny speech.
I think of the words of Jawaharlal Nehru. A moment comes but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. So let us speak now with clarity and conviction that cannot be misunderstood about what this new age will deliver and for whom.
Sir.
But the real challenges for Mamdani lie ahead. Though his campaign touched the core economic issues, prioritizing the working class section, recent threats by Donald Trump saying that he would not be contributing federal funds other than the very minimum as required to New York if Mamdani wins the election is worrisome. His criticism of the business class and the elite who call New York City their home and Manhattan as the financial capital of the world will also see upheaval. For an effective rule, Mamdani has to make some peace with the class. His support for Palestine and promise to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if he sets foot in New York will also be tested. Trump may also see a tussle with Mamdani since New York is the former's business hub. As supporters cheered for Mamdani, Virginia, New Jersey and California too had reasons to celebrate. Virginia and New Jersey got their first female Democrat governor and lieutenant governor in Abigail Spanberger and Ghazala Hashmi. Democrat Jay Jones bagged the Attorney General's post in Virginia. In New Jersey, Democrat Mikey Sherrill won the gubernatorial race. After Pureville won the re-election as the mayor of Cincinnati after defeating J.D. Vance's half-brother, Corey Bauman. The victories come ahead of the primaries and will determine the next strategy for the Republicans. As the winners received congratulatory messages from top Democrat leaders like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom, and Senator Elizabeth Warren, it was President Donald Trump who blamed the ballot for missing his name and the government shutdown as reasons for the defeat of the Republicans. House Speaker Mike Johnson in a post told New Yorkers that they have chosen a true extremist and a Marxist and that the consequences will be faced across the nation. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me to discuss the Mamdani factor are Mitchell Plitnick, foreign policy writer, columnist from Maryland, as also our colleague and reporter on the ground. From Washington, joining me is Rohit Sharma. Rohit, if I could come to you first, big win for Mamdani. Trump is in a huddle. What could his next course of action be when it comes to the Mamdani factor in New York?
Well, look, President Trump has, in a way, distanced himself from the loss that the Republicans saw last night, saying that he wasn't on the ballot and that it's the government shutdown that has cost Republicans the loss. And he met and he huddled with senators this morning at a breakfast meeting, and he said that he wanted to go out there and give a speech, but he decided against it. And, he asked them to end the filibuster and cautioned them that if filibuster is in place, the Republican priorities would not get passed. And I think he's also alluding to the fact that there could be some consequences in the future races, which obviously will play out in November of next year. So right now, he's asking the government to open. He's asking Republicans to nix the filibuster. And we also saw this morning a letter from House leadership and Senate leadership from the Democratic side wanting to work with Republicans to open the government. But right now, I think President Trump is making sure that his base is aware that it's not his name that cost to them to lose the election.
Right.
It was the government shutdown and the inability of Republican members in the Congress and Senate to keep the government open.
If I could also bring in Mitchell Plitnick here. Mitchell, a very important development when it comes to, do we have Mitchell Plitnick?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
here.
so Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us. If we could just talk about the Mamdani factor and how it is impacting Trump, but also could impact midterm elections given the kind of performance we're seeing, not just by Mamdani, but other Democrats as well, Virginia, New Jersey.
Well, Mamdani's victory brings up some profound questions for the Democratic Party. He is a much more progressive. He identifies as democratic socialist. That is his. He's more radically left, one would say, than than Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger, who won the gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey. So there's a big question among Democrats about how much they should lean into the more progressive wing, which is growing and which represents the youth of the Democratic Party and is increasingly representing the majority of the Democratic Party in terms of its members, but not necessarily of its donors. So there's this sort of split question that Mamdani's victory raises, and it remains to be seen how the Democrats will strategically address that question, particularly in the midterms next year. So they're going to have to grapple with that at the same time as Mamdani himself is going to have to grapple with the fact that centrist Democrats don't like him, are not going to passionately support his efforts, and that will combine with Republican obstructionism. It's going to make his job very difficult. But if he succeeds in New York and gets his policies through and people are happy with them, I think it will have a profound effect on the Democrats, and we'll see a major shift in where the party heads in the future.
Right. Mitchell, just talking about the policies itself, you very rightly said that, Democrats could be split in terms of what Mamdani represents and the funds that come to Democrats. Now, we've seen all the presidents in the past, including Obama, when it comes to a position on Israel, it was very different from what Mamdani brings to the table. Could the question of Gaza, Israel, Muslims, immigration now really bring in problems for the Democrats more than what Trump and the Republicans are thinking, that this is in a way a loss for the Republicans and they could be in trouble? Is it the other way around?
Well, we're seeing actually in both parties a great deal of debate and really splits over the question of U.S. support for Israel. We're seeing it among Republicans, although not nearly as profoundly as we're seeing it among Democrats. Democrats have been very clear. Democratic voters overwhelmingly opposed the genocide in Gaza. They overwhelmingly supported U.S. action to try and stop it. And unfortunately, the Democratic leadership did not listen to them. Now, that was a significant factor in the 2024 loss of the presidential race. Not necessarily Gaza itself, but the fact that what Gaza represented was a Democratic leadership that was not only not being guided by any ethical standards, but also not listening to its constituents. So it wasn't only Gaza that was the question. I think that we're seeing throughout the United States, and again, as I said, in both parties, a profound shift in the way Israel is perceived, in the way the occupation of Palestine is perceived, and in what people want U.S. Middle East policy to be. That's not anti-Israel, and certainly not anti-Jewish. Many Jews, in fact, the Jewish community is one of the places where the most profound shift is happening. I'm sorry?
I said certainly not anti-Jewish. He's made that very clear. The distinction is very, very clear in everything that he's done. Having said that, Mitchell, just about the fact that this is a 34-year-old we're talking about. He's just won the mayoral elections. What next for him? How do you see the entire breadth of his politics really pan out? Because I've been tracking him from his campaign to the speech that he made today. In itself, you can see a vast difference of how he's matured.
I think that's correct. I also think that his speech, one of the things that I thought was not explicitly stated, but was in there, particularly when he told Donald Trump to turn up the volume. He has his sights set on a lot more than just being the mayor of New York. He I believe is trying to, first of all, affect a profound change, as I alluded to, in the Democratic Party, but also for himself. He expects to be a national figure. I think he expects to be a national leader. I think his youth works for him. Let's not forget, probably the most popular Democrat of the past century was John F. Kennedy, who was the youngest president in the history of the United States, and is remembered because he was assassinated as a very young man. So I think his youth works for him also because we're seeing a real, I would even say, disgust with the way Democrats hold on to their positions in office. We see Democratic senators too feeble and possibly senile to do their jobs, dying in office and holding on to that office through political machinations. People are tired of it, and they want to see something different. One of the reasons that I think progressive forces in the Democratic Party are going to continue to build momentum is that what we've seen over the years is that people vote in the United States have been voting for change in one election after another for the past 2 decades. And so they go back and forth. They go between Democrats and Republicans, whoever the candidates are. A lot of Zohran's momentum was built by reaching out to Trump voters. That's how he started really getting his campaign off the ground. So I think one of the things that has happened is that Democrats elect centrists like Abigail
Right.
Spanberger, like Mikey Sherrill, and they don't make change. Things are the
true.
same. And then so 4 years later, the voters go back to the other side. I think Mamdani has the opportunity to break that cycle.
Absolutely. Mitchell Plitnick, thank you so much for that perspective. It does seem like he has time in hand, he has a vision and ambition, and he'll have to walk the talk on this one. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, Zohran Mamdani's victory has created history, but with victory comes controversy. Palestinian American activist Linda Sarsour has claimed that the Council on American Islamic Relations, that's CAIR or CAIR, which is under congressional scrutiny for alleged links to the Hamas, was one of the main funders for Zohran Mamdani's campaign for the New York City mayoral polls. Now, according to a New York Post report, and we do know that New York Post has written a lot against Mamdani, Sarsour, Mamdani's political mentor, had boasted that she and the Hamas-linked nonprofit helped fuel Mamdani's race. This comes even as CAIR is under investigation by lawmakers, including Elise Stefanik and Tom Cotton, who have urged the U.S. Treasury to examine whether the nonprofit might be bankrolled by Hamas. The Post also reported that the nonprofit was allegedly provided seed money by Hamas, according to evidence presented in a congressional hearing. The report further stated that in a video, Sarsour has suggested that she might reveal details about Mamdani's swift rise in politics and the financial backing he received from the Council on American Islamic Relations once the election concludes.
Stop taking the subway after September 11th because she didn't.
Filipinos were seen scavenging around what was left of their homes in Cebu province after Typhoon Kalmaigi, locally named Tino, left a trail of destruction in the central Philippines. Drone footage captured along the riverside showed damaged houses made out of light materials caked in mud after the river overflowed. Officials said on Wednesday that among those killed by Kalmaigi, which made landfall early on Tuesday, were 6 crew members of a military helicopter on a humanitarian mission. More than 200,000 people were evacuated across the Visayas region ahead of the storm. Kalmaigi continued to batter parts of Palawan Island as it headed towards the South China Sea. Winds at the speed of 120 kilometers per hour and gusts of up to 165 kilometers per hour. The 20th storm to hit the Philippines this year is moving towards Vietnam, where preparations are underway ahead of its expected landfall on Friday. Now, a video of an Indian man being assaulted by an individual in a Toronto food outlet went viral on social media. The clip, which originally surfaced on X, showed that a confrontation escalated from an argument to a physical assault inside what appeared to be a McDonald's store. The Canadian man threw his phone aside in anger, which prompted the Indian man to pick it up. Moments later, the visibly intoxicated individual advanced towards him, pushed him, and grabbed him by the collar. He accused the other man of acting superior. A staff member along with onlookers intervened and asked both men to take it outside. The aggressor continued accusing the Indian man of arrogance before he was eventually escorted out of the premises.
You said what to me?
I'm sorry, sir.
You said what to
Sir?
You said
Boss?
what to me?
Boss?
Today in Statecraft, we discuss a very important development in the Caribbean. Trump promised that he's going to end wars, but what we see are warships encircling Venezuela. What's really happening over there, and what are Trump's plans? Is this the beginning of yet another Cold War? Watch Statecraft and a detailed episode on India Today Global YouTube channel. But for now, here's an excerpt. Donald Trump loves a one-liner. He says he ended 8 wars in 8 months and that nobody else finishes what they start.
This is one of 8 wars that my administration has ended in just 8 months. We're averaging one a month. There is only one left.
It sounds like victory laps until you look at the Caribbean.
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to around with the United States.
Troops, warships, F-35s, a carrier strike group steaming in, missiles paraded as anti-drug tools, and now airstrikes on boats that leave bodies in the water. Trump says he's stopping narco traffickers. Critics say he's paving the way for regime change. Then Moscow shows up with transport planes, air defenses, even talk of cruise and ballistic missiles, and the language moves from counter-narcotics to great power standoff. Is this really a drug campaign or the opening act of a new war or a proxy fight between Washington and Moscow? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Trump boasts of ending wars, Armenia, Azerbaijan, India, Pakistan, Israel, Hamas, and more, while his second presidency has rebuilt the US muscle in the Caribbean. The official line: seize drugs, stop narco-terrorists, protect the homeland. The visible reality: carrier groups, special ops vessels, covert CIA authorizations, and repeated strikes that killed dozens. Russia answers with military flights to Caracas, weapons talk, and promises of help. So who is policing drugs and who is policing influence? Is the US fighting cartel boats, or are we watching two global powers test each other in America's backyard? Trump's slogan used to be "No new wars." He shouted it, crowded it, and built an image of a commander who ends conflicts. Yet, here he is again, the biggest US military buildup in the Caribbean in decades, strikes at sea that leave bodies, and talk of seizing oil fields and toppling a government. The contradiction is stark and naked. A president who claims peacemaker status now presides over strikes, covert missions, and a massive forward posture. That tension between "I ended wars" and "I'm ready to start one" is the headline. It's not subtle, it's not small. The American display is unmistakable. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, amphibious ships, attack submarines, F-35s, B-52s, AC-130s, and MQ-9 drones, all amassed within reach of Venezuela. Bases and airfields in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands show upgrades and activity. A floating base that carries special forces sits in the area. Ships capable of landing troops and helicopters have been seen. The message is a mix of threat and preparation, powerful enough to do harm, visible enough to be a signal. It is the kind of presence that changes calculations in capitals, in barracks, and in the minds of local commanders. The US says it is striking drug boats. The strikes are dramatic. Missile or air attacks on small vessels accused of smuggling cocaine and other narcotics. The operations killed dozens. Multiple strikes, multiple boats, and immediate headlines. The administration frames these as law enforcement at sea, a hard answer to a deadly flow of drugs into the United States of America. Critics call the strikes extrajudicial and question the evidence linking these boats to Maduro or to major cartels. When a country uses military firepower at sea and kills suspects without transparent legal process, it raises questions about proportionality, authority, and motive. Are we policing the narco trade or creating a pretext for pressure? Trump government has labeled Maduro a narco-terrorist and put a $50 million bounty on his head. Language matters. Narco-terrorist is not simply insulting. It is a legal and political categorization that justifies an extraordinary response in the eyes of policymakers. The bounty is a real escalator. It makes capture a priority and signals that removing Maduro is not only desirable but actionable. That rhetoric tightens the embrace between counter-narcotics policy and regime change strategy, blurring lines that used to be clearer before. This is not just about drugs. Venezuela sits on massive oil reserves and sits close to a vital canal and sea lanes. Control of energy resources and influence in Latin America are strategic prizes. China and Russia have been deepening ties with Caracas. The US sees that as an erosion of its backyard influence. That makes every naval move, every weapons deployment, and every diplomatic threat double as a play for long-term advantage. If the US is accused of seeking oil control, the optics of military strikes and fleet deployments only feed that narrative. This moment is a test of restraint and clarity. Is the mission truly about drugs, with force used sparingly and legally, or is the narco narrative a cover for a high-stakes power play meant to topple a government and grab influence in a resource-rich state?